So we have Cheryl Outram back with us and Latoya Thomas. Good morning to you, ladies.
Good morning. Good morning.
Always good to have you with us.
Yes.
And this is kind of the this is our third bite at getting through 14 tips for successful learning. Now, Cheryl is the principal and Latoya is a tutor with Life Lessons Academy and preschool.
Yeah.
And for those people who might be just tuning in, let's bring them along, Cheryl, in terms of what we're talking about. So you've kind of come up with 14 tips that you believe are important for successful, being the operative word, successful learning.
Yeah. Yes. Considering that we're now in the 11 plus season, I thought it was important to help parents to narrow down exactly what they need to understand or to focus on as it relates to learning for their children. Successful learning. Every parent wants their child to be successful, but I don't think that everybody understands what that looks like exactly. So these tips are really to help the parent at home and also to help the educator and the child, because sometimes even the child is in the learning environment and they do not understand why a teacher might insist on doing things a particular way. The parent might feel, well, okay, this is in the best interest of my child, but the parent might not recognize, well, okay, for example, many parents want to be in the learning environment with the child, while the teacher is on the other end of the spectrum trying to create an independent learner. So the same way you would have to wean a child off the breast, teachers want parents to wean their children off of them as well, so that when they come into the environment, they can be confident. They can be confident speakers, they're not clingy, because if you have a classroom with 15, 20, 30 children, you want each child to have a certain level of independence so that they can then learn, so that the teacher is then doing less mothering and more teaching.
Isn't there like a balance to that? I guess that would apply to maybe preschoolers and some of the younger children, but isn't there a balance that must be found with the involvement of the parents and how involved they are in the learning process and how much they kind of defer to the educators?
Yes, there is a balance. The challenge, however, comes because many parents themselves are not educators and they do not understand, how to instruct the child. Oftentimes what the parent does with the child is instill a lot of fear, lack of confidence and so on. And the fact that you are the parent, the child sees you in a whole different light. The child is always thinking about pleasing the parent, about not saying the wrong thing or not doing the wrong thing. That's at the forefront of the child's mind. Many times when children and parents are in the same environment, you can see the child kind of eyeing the parent. You're not really getting a truthful response. And while the parents are listening for a particular thing, the educator is listening for something else, So to get that balance, parents themselves need to be a bit more educated about what the educational environment is trying to create or what is needed in that environment. Like I said, from the home environment, the parents is focusing on protection and nurturing and being there, making the child feel safe. But then there is that part where you want to teach the child the skills to keep themselves safe in an environment. So for example, if you're preparing the child for a learning environment, your concern might be the child being violated. But as a parent, you don't have to be there with the child. What you need to do is to teach the child about personal space. So if you're in a public environment and there's somebody's coming close to you, they should not pass this point. They shouldn't be able to touch your private. If the person is too close, then you step back. You want to teach your child how to protect themselves, and even in terms of communication. Oftentimes in the home environment, many of the children we come into contact with, their principle is be seen and not heard. They're not, allowed to speak and to speak honestly because they are punished for their opinions. Now, when the child goes into a public space, when the child goes into a learning environment, many children sit and they don't feel free to give an opinion or to speak up.
Because of how they're kind of
Conditioned in the home.
yeah, in the home. How do you find that children not feeling as free as they really should in the home kind of influences how it plays out in the classroom, or how open they are to speak? Whether we have children who are very reserved or who are a little more outspoken, how does what happens in the home kind of play into all of that?
Well, basically, you have a lot of parents to shout at children, and they would say things like, you're stupid, you're retarded, or you would never be this, or, you know, and like if sometimes parents having issues with, you know, mom and dad having issues, and you like your father, you can never be this here or whatever, and you like this self-esteem thing going on from early, so you put a lot of doubt and fear and less confidence and so on, you know, within the child. So a lot of parents is be like shouting at the children for simple things that you can talk and so on, because a lot of times, you know, coming up back then, the older parents would, you know, throw a shoe, a slipper and so on. So that abuse came, and a lot of parents were not taught how to deal, you know, with themselves. So it starts within the home, and a lot of parents just create those things in children. I remember a time teaching a student, and the child he would be very open with me, and he would, you know, and when he see his mother, he'd be like this here. He stopped the automatic, you know, affection and everything. He's like, I wish my mommy was like you, so patient and loving. My mommy always crawling. My mommy always shouting at me. And it's like, he had this shyness over him, and it's like, the only way that he felt safe or is the way how I treat him, you know, like how I talk to him and how I would, you know, do things with him and give him things. He's like, I only wish my mommy was like this here, you know. So a lot of times parents does create those fears and self-esteem issues from small. You know, I saw a woman at a clinic one time with a child like 3, and she was shouting and ringing the little child ear and carrying. I was like, this child is 3. You understand? But she was crying, and you could hear her from all the way, you know. So a lot of parents, educated ones as well, just put that fear in children from young, so they don't know how to express themselves, and then they, like, as Cheryl was saying, that they would, you know, want to be there to hear everything the child would say. You know, I remember there was a young lady that she was being abused, and she came and she said, but she couldn't tell the mother, because every time she wanted to say anything to the mother, he was a liar, he would never do that, and she would beat the child for that. So a lot of time parents just know things, know their children need help, and they would pretend that they don't hear or they don't notice, you know, and the children grow up with a lot of angry issues and so on from within the home, and then we as educators now have to deal, you know, with that.
Cheryl, as an educator, and the therapist just went off the
Yes.
set. So now from an educator's perspective, from a principal's seat, or even as a teacher in the classroom, what can parents do to maybe turn, and we're going back to culture again, because we've heard a lot of spare the rod, spoil the child, and going back to the Bible. Bring up a child in the way he should go, and when he won't depart from it. But they mean, when they say the way he should go, they mean some licks. And if you're not lashing the child, then it's a problem. For a long time, people felt like children should sit down there. So they have all this energy, but it's like, don't move. This is your square.
Yeah.
You know, from where you sit, how are these things impacting how children are able to receive information, how they're able to engage in the classroom, how they're able to learn?
Yeah, it is. The impact is tremendous. It is tremendous. Again, if we look at Barbados, especially the Barbadian model, we know that culture is passed on. It is hereditary. The same way you would pass on a tangible item, culture is passed on. Habits and lifestyles are passed on. So if you come up with a mother who's always quarreling, who's always shouting and so on, you will become that without even recognizing that you are that. So oftentimes the patterns that the parents practice, they themselves have not done the inward work, and they've never encountered a different way.
So a lot of them come and they're surprised. Would he do this in the classroom? Would she do this? But maybe it's a reflection.
It's a reflection of what's
what
happening in the home. Because I remember even with me, now looking at us culturally, like I shared before, I was raised by a mother who was not formally educated. And I would joke and tell people, listen, the worst thing you could have as a parent is I would call it a cane cutter mother, because their method of communication is licks. And that's what they learned in the plantation. We can't get away from it. When we go back and we understand how many of our foreparents were treated, even the type of beatings. We talk about beating a child. I know how I was beaten. We Bajans, you were beaten with any Caribbean children. When the stick, parents used to take the old hose and cut it up and save it to beat you. The dog hunter. You understand? And when you go back and you navigate slavery, you recognize that even how you were beaten, the parents learned it from slavery.
Yeah.
You were beaten and then sent to get a bath. There are some children in this country who are sent to bathe in salt water.
Yeah. And you're saying that play out in the classroom in
plays
terms
out.
of how children are able to assimilate, how they're able to
Because
learn
you
and
have children,
engage.
you have children in classroom
Yeah.
who they're coming to school, they've been abused in the home, they've been beaten badly in the home. So then that child shows up in the classroom and that child isn't able to communicate, isn't able to work. And the teacher who, you have a limited time to teach. So the teacher is focused on teaching, but then they realize, well, Sally is very quiet today. I remember I had an incident where there was a teenage child in my classroom, and I know she was usually bubbly and very talkative and so on. And I realized she came in and she wasn't her regular self. I got up, another teacher was teaching. I got up, went to the office and said, come. I said, if you need to talk, I'm here. And she said, no, I'm okay, ma'am. We came back out. She sat for a while and then she said, ma'am, I think I want to take you up on that offer. We went back in the office and she pulled up her sleeve and showed me her hands. And when I looked at her hands, I saw what looked like scratches. Just like if you take a hand and scratch. So it's going all up the hand. And when she showed me, I said, okay, what's that? Because this is the first time I'm encountering this. I said, what happened? She said, ma'am, I cut myself. I said, oh, what do you cut yourself with? She said, razor blades. And I said, okay, why? She said, the topic that we gave 2 weeks ago for the essay, it was about homosexuality. And she said, ma'am, I'm a lesbian. And in responding to the essay topic, I had to go against what I actually am and practice. And it causes me tremendous pressure and anxiety because my mother in the home, I have to pretend that I'm not like this because my mother told me she put me out. So whenever I'm under that pressure, I cut myself.
Yeah, I know there are a lot of children engaging in self-harm
Yeah.
and things like that. But for parents who are, and I wanted to make sure that I got in on something that you said, not to discount what you said, and I know you mentioned about having a cane cutter mother, but I know there are a lot of us as well who have what they would deem maybe office jobs and so on,
Right.
who have it challenging as well. And
Yes.
sometimes we bring a lot of the stresses of the work environment and personal relationships and just life generally
Yeah.
to the way that we engage with
Yeah.
our children. And that can really take away from them being able to learn. So not necessarily saying it's only a
right. It's not a
certain type
profiling
of
of parent.
person or
Right.
classified by social standing or what have you, because we know we see abuse across society, in all types of different socioeconomic backgrounds and stuff like that.
Because we
I-
had a 6-year-old teacher, 6 years old, and again, coming from a very affluent family. And I remember I started by just doing a devotion. I was talking about Daniel and the lion in the lion's den. And I said, well, look, the lion could be representative of anybody who's attacking you or anybody who's trying to, destroy you and so on. And the little 6-year-old said, oh, that would be my mother.
Oh boy.
Because she's always quarreling with me. She doesn't really care for me. She's about her boyfriends and
A
this and that.
6-year-old?
A 6-year-old.
Wow.
I mean, we were just at devotion part of the class. And I was like, wow, Bible study gone wrong. I then had to respond to that.
Yeah.
You see, so again, as you said, it's not just one group of persons, Oftentimes, life is lifing, and you don't realize as a parent how what you're doing is impacting that child. And then when they show up in the classroom, there's so many issues. I remember I said to a teacher in the government system, I said, listen, now she was teaching children around the ages of 6 to 9 and stuff. And I said to her, don't assume that those little babies have not yet considered or even tried to attempt suicide. I said, you need to have an intelligent conversation with them. You need to do it via a story and so on, and ask questions. And she did it, and she came back to me in tears.
I encountered an 8-year-old recently who said that in the presence of some others who brought it to my attention. I wish I was never born, and
Yeah.
we don't think that the little ones are dealing with things like this.
that.
But I can see how it can have a negative impact on them successfully learning. Yeah, so this was definitely a starter for this topic, but it is something to consider, I think, for all of us.
And it's not easy
How
for
we
the
engage
teacher.
with our children.
It's not easy for the teacher because you have to then become a vault for those children. Oftentimes you cannot tell the parents. You
Well,
can't
the
talk
truth
to
of the
them.
matter is the legislation that's now on the table will call for mandatory reporting
Yeah.
in certain instances, and I believe teachers will fall under that. So we definitely have to continue this conversation. I enjoy seeing you ladies every single week. So, yeah, I mean, that's not a challenge. So
It's
we're going
always
to
a
continue
pleasure.
talking about these tips for successful learning. And believe it or not, I don't know if I'm happy or sad to say that we've not even mentioned one of the tips from the list. But, you know, all very, very important discussion. Thank you so much, Cheryl Outram and Latoya Thomas, for
You're
coming in
welcome.
and sharing such insightful discussion, or sparking such insightful discussion about the way that we should look at how we engage with our children. Very, very important. So do some introspection today, parents, and see if we can go through an entire day without shouting.
Yes.
I most certainly will try. All right, thank you, ladies.
You're welcome.
Morning, morning.